What's up, you guys? I posted a video yesterday. I didn't think it was going to be as controversial as it became, and we're here to discuss our position on this video. And what I said was, we can't blame police officers for training they do not receive. And the video was of an officer who had a very difficult time apprehending a suspect. I have no knowledge of the backstory, but it was clear the officer was underprepared to carry out the task. Here to discuss this and debate this with me is one of the head instructors of the GST program that we provide for law enforcement, Evandro Nunes, one of the head instructors here at Gracie University, but also the GST head instructor as well that travels around the world teaching law enforcement. My position is that it is the department's responsibility to provide all the training necessary so that police officers can effectively carry out their jobs safely and effectively every single day and get home at the end of the night.
I don't agree with that. I believe that it's on the officer's hand to seek out the knowledge and to train themselves in the jiu-jitsu school or whatever martial art or whatever they judge appropriate for their training, so they can keep defending themselves and doing their job better.
And rather than debating this privately, we thought we would do it publicly, since it has everything to do with every single person watching this video is affected by this debate. Every police officer needs to hear and needs to have an opinion on this, and every department needs a position, and every civilian will either benefit or suffer as a result of the answer to this age-old question. Who is the responsibility? Who holds the responsibility? Is it the responsibility of the department to provide or the officers to pursue?
Now, your opening line was like this. The video yesterday, the officer was underprepared.
Yes.
And I already disagree with that, to the sense that he was not underprepared towards his line of knowledge.
Based on what he knows.
Based on what he knows, he was perfectly prepared. I bet that guy is following the department procedure and doing everything that is required. Now, he's underprepared compared to us and compared to other officers that pursue and do the GST and train with us, you understand?
Right.
So he is prepared, but was he prepared? You see?
I understand. So you're saying that he was as prepared as he was supposed to be, based on his experience and what they're providing. And you think he needs to pursue it in order to be more prepared to handle the same deal he did yesterday. Here's my concern. My belief is this. The same way hiring a police officer and then asking him to go learn how to fight, or expecting from the public and from the world and expecting the officer to go learn how to fight, is like hiring a firefighter and expecting the firefighter to go learn how to put out fires somewhere.
Okay.
My belief is that if any job, forget policing and firefighting, but any job requires a special skill set particular to that job, the institution doing the hiring has to provide the training necessary so that the officer can do their job safely. If not, they're deploying officers and people every single day into the workforce that are underprepared and are a safety hazard to themselves and every person they interact with every single day. And that's what we're seeing so much of, which is why I'm so concerned.
Now, I understand, that makes sense, because especially the example that you said, which is law enforcement, firefighter, but even though that makes sense, Rener, what about this? If someone wants to work at Gracie University, do we want to hire someone that doesn't know anything and then teach them jiu-jitsu? For example, me, when I came in, would I be a blue belt and would you hire me and then instruct me, or I came so ready and so open and still learning from the department policies and from whatever's happening, and then that happens. So am I here and are employers here because they already demonstrate, they seek the knowledge themselves and then they become, or the opposite? You understand?
Good point. So then the question becomes, an organization has two options when it comes to hiring. And we're not talking even law enforcement, we're talking life now. An organization, either the special skill set that is required to be effective at the job, either that skill set is a prerequisite to hiring.
Okay, I get it.
Or that skill set is provided upon hiring. In law enforcement, it's neither.
Got it.
That's the problem. Now, fortunately, here at Gracie University, we have hired some black belts who came in as black belts and were so knowledgeable and so talented when they arrived that less training was necessary. But we also have the infrastructure in place to hire someone from scratch if we chose to do so and train them, as so many certified training centers do and are. They're started by, early combatives belts, blue belts, who know very little, just the basics of what to do, and then they develop their skills as teachers inside the organization with the training that we provide for them to be effective teachers and maintain a certain quality standard. So the question is if all of a sudden law enforcement made it a prerequisite where everyone to be a police officer at all or a particular department had to be a blue belt in Brazilian or Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes.
Then they making their claim, but they have to hold the standard and say, okay, look, we don't hire people because it's irresponsible of us to hire someone who isn't a blue belt, so it's a safety hazard to bring anyone on board who isn't a blue belt, at least in Jiu-Jitsu. If they did that, I wouldn't have much grounds to stand on to say that now they have to provide X, Y, and Z training because they're making a prerequisite.
I see, but they do provide training.
They do provide training.
It's just the amount of training is so minimum.
Yes.
So like the amount of hours, the feedback that we get from officers.
4 hours annually, I would say, is the average. And that's not the highest, it's not the lowest, but it's the average. Some do 8, some do 16, some do 2 hours every 2 years on ground fighting defensive tactics. And then they send these officers out and expect them to do their thing. And what's crazy is that the whole point is the departments are not taking responsibility for the training. Now here's what's crazy. We're generalizing a little bit, but we've had the privilege of working with many departments who are very effective at training their officers and are very progressive. And since they've become GST, Gracie Survival Tactics, kind of certified departments, they've made major changes. They went from 4 hours a year to 16 hours a year of defensive tactics training. And it's 16 hours a year. Some of you are thinking, I do that in 2 weeks at my BJJ school. And you're right. But it doesn't change the fact that in a police department where they have budgetary constraints and all these other issues, 16 hours a year can be a huge deal in terms of teaching an officer just how to manage the distance and avoid getting knocked out in a worst case scenario situation.
Yeah. When you're talking, you're saying about how some departments do not provide the training. But here's the deal, Rener. They do provide the training that they judge necessary. So is it fair to say that because Jiu-Jitsu is new, it's almost like the departments, they're unaware of how effective a martial art can be in a situation in which, and the discussion is this, and officers agree with us, and tell me what you think, but the likelihood of an officer to access a firearm in the line of duty, and in his whole career,
to utilize the weapon,
is X.
Yeah, less than 1% of ever pulling the trigger.
Yes.
I would say. If I'm wrong, tell me.
And the likelihood of an officer on his career as an officer to find himself in a scuffle with someone is 100%.
Yeah.
So they devote a lot of hours for other things because they think that those are, it's almost like this. The bad in which law enforcement falls into is the bad of the duty belt, let's call it. Now, the reason why is because they're unaware that there's a bed beyond that in which we can start building it. We love the duty belt and the tools and everything that is there and the training that is happening. The problem is that we want to create a safety net on top of the current safety net.
Yes.
And the departments, they don't know what do you mean a safety net on top of a safety net, you understand? Because Jiu-Jitsu is new. And people, and we see the people that are using Jiu-Jitsu, they're using for tournaments and they're using for UFC, which is beautiful in its own way, but it's almost like it's disconnected from what they do, you understand?
Yes.
And it creates, instead of like people looking, so wow, that is the answer for us, creates a certain disconnection from it. You understand?
They go, no, we don't want officers doing MMA, that's crazy and it's a liability and then we're not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I agree, and there's a certain reservation of implementation because of that, a certain hesitation to bring it on board.
So how do we do that? Because here's a question. How can we make the department understand that there is a safety net that is more reliable, safety for the officer, safer for the officer, safer for the civilian,
right?
Safer for everyone and more effective.
Yeah.
Because we don't want the duty belt to be deployed before necessary.
Yeah, I think that it really ties back to the neurological evidence for the need for this type of training, right? And
what do you mean?
What I mean is this: when you're in a fight, right? Your ability, right? Your brain operates in two primary functions, right? You have your prefrontal cortex, the PFC, which is your kind of rational decision-making, clear, conscious thought, deliberate action. PFC, prefrontal cortex, is where you operate when you're relaxed and in control of a situation. When things get out of control and you're panicking, right? And you think of any panic, fight, flight, freeze, those kind of lizard brain operations are amygdala, right? Operations in the amygdala part of the brain.
Yes.
When you're in a situation that you think you're in control, but you lose control, the amygdala hijacks the prefrontal cortex, and that's when excessive force is used or ineffectiveness, right? You just simply can't clearly, consciously employ your strategy, and you lose control of the suspect, or you're excessively violent in a particular situation. So I just think what departments need to understand is that officers need to be given the tools so that the control, or at least the perceived control in many ways, you have to believe that you're in control of a situation. The state of control remains intact longer for the officer so that the officer can remain in their prefrontal cortex operation mode, which gives them the ability to handle situations right, more humanely in many cases and more appropriately with regards to the use of force. But it all begins with whether or not the officer is capable physically of controlling a situation, and that is rooted back in what training and what tactics are we providing. Yeah. So I think that once departments become aware that neurologically these officers who are using excessive force, it's primarily because they feel that they don't have control of a particular situation. When you lose control of the suspect, you lose control of your tactics. And that's when you're much more likely to become or to utilize excessive force.
You know, it's a concern. Once you lose control of the suspect, you lose control of your tactics, which makes you lose control of the suspect, which makes you
lose control of yourself.
Which makes a snowball of, once you go to the amygdala path, it's a snowball of craziness.
And listen,
now,
yeah, go ahead.
The thing is this, a friend of mine, Dwayne, he told me like this, there's no, and just tell me what you guys think about this concept. We use excessive force, and we understand how it's what's the word for it? It's reported, yes, and how it's perceived. But he told me like this, Evandro, there's no such a thing as excessive force. There's something that is appropriate use of force used in excessive ways.
Interesting.
Think about that.
Yeah, because every use of force is appropriate at some point.
And the officers that we see the view say, yeah, that was excessive. That was not excessive to the point in which he was trained for. That was appropriate use of force. But because they don't have anything else when that doesn't work, they keep doing that excessively. So they're doing excessively appropriate use of force, yes, and it's being perceived as excessive, like they are being excessive, but they're not.
Yes.
You follow me? So that's just something for us to be aware when we watch a video like that, and we have the empathy that they're not. It's not like this. Not like he has a tool that would work with less, and he's being excessive just because whatever reason. No, he's doing whatever he's trained to do, and he's doing multiple times. And when you perceive that,
because he doesn't have the options,
and because we have the options, or we perceive an option, some people don't even have the option, but they know that there's someone that could do better. So then they judge that action, yes, by the eyes of yeah, either what they can do or what they think that
someone else could do with more options. Yes, but it all boils back to, I agree, right? If these are your only two options, you're going to go from here to here very quickly, right? When all you have is a hammer, everyone is a nail. So you're going to jump and skip. But for someone who has the training, and the more training the better, the more options you have between, right, the least force and the maximum use of force, you have options. So you don't have to jump so quickly. And listen, every trained officer out there and every department that has successfully implemented GST and the departments that are much more progressive know this. And the evidence is out there. The videos and the breakdowns that we've done for the positive, for the victorious engagements, right? The Jared Tiptons, the Ruben Alvarezes, these guys who do jiu-jitsu and took someone down and controlled so reservedly, right? They control with minimum force, just enough to tie the person up because they know what they're capable of. You see the evidence time and time again of what it looks like when it works. And we're also seeing evidence of what it looks like when it doesn't work. And all this is a wake-up call to the departments of these officers who are having incredible difficulties controlling the simplest of situations. It's, at some point, you have to realize that it's not their responsibility to go get it. It's your responsibility to provide it.
I see.
And more videos happen like this, the more and more people are going to realize, hopefully. Now, this doesn't mean that an officer right now who goes out and pursues training because their department isn't providing it shouldn't be commended. It's commendable for a police officer to say, man, my department who sends me out into danger every day is not providing it to me, so I'm going to go sign up at a BJJ school and pay a couple $100 a month to learn jiu-jitsu dude, like he shouldn't have to go find somewhere to pay to give that money to learn something that his job is asking him to do. It should be included with the job. It's a business expense for the department to provide that training. So the guys who go pursue it, there's no doubt that we respect, admire, and commend those people. What I'm saying is, as long as the general consensus from the public is how dare he be a cop and not go train at a BJJ or an MMA school. As long as that's the consensus and that's the energy we're giving towards these videos, then what happens is the department heads are sitting in the background like this. Yeah, I agree with you guys. Why aren't they go get it? The responsibility will never land on them if it's always on the individual officers. And that's
what we want to change.
That's what we want to change. So it's not that it's not commendable and it's not even recommended. Like if you're in a slow-moving department, between you and I, don't tell this to your chief, but between you and I, if you're an officer in a slow to integrate modern-day defensive tactics department, if you're in that department, go get some training. Because if your department's not going to provide it and your life is on the line, it doesn't matter who's getting paid for what. You need to survive the altercations that are happening.
And
so
the
go
thing
get
is like
it.
this. The very fact that you are going after the information, the very fact that these officers that we do the breakdowns, they have training. And you go to Ruben's Instagram, he's everyday training jiu-jitsu, everyday training firearm, like you guys already know how to become better at anything. But the very fact that you guys are doing this is the missing piece to convince the departments to implement that as a default and more hours of training. You understand?
Meaning,
because
like,
you talk about educating departments and educating the old school people that are unaware of this new information of how to defend themselves. So because you deploy yourself, and when you go back and when you go to the street, your partners are seeing how you handle a subject on the floor.
Yes, this is fact. Not only partners, the world sees when we put a video up and 500,000 views for a beautiful breakdown, they're seeing it.
Yes, and then when you fill out the report, there's no injuries. There's no injuries to the suspect or to the officer. And now the chief sees and says, how come this person never has an injury on either side and these guys have it? So now you see how by you going after, you are bringing information inside the department. And imagine an ant going inside with a little something inside the what's the name of the ant place?
The ant farm.
And so we win the fight from the inside. Because we understand that once someone does not believe in something, it's very hard for us to sit in front of a chief and reason his way out of his belief.
Yes.
You understand? That's a tough thing.
It's tough.
But once little soldiers, not little soldiers, soldiers start going and start changing the reality in the street, the chief,
one by one, an officer who goes out and pursues their own training one by one, it's a bottom top approach instead of a top bottom approach, right? Top down, it's bottom up is the approach that he's talking about. And in that sense, I think I'm right in that it's 100% on the department, but in this sense, he's right in that right now, until the departments wake up and do what they actually and absolutely must do, I guess he's more right in that the officers do need to pursue this training, not because it should be their responsibility, but because
you're part of the movement.
There's
what is really right.
Yes, and in that sense,
because you are really right. You know,
I think you're right.
But wait, you're right. That's what we want.
Yeah, it's what we want long term.
But until then, it's almost like this. We realize that is not the reality today.
We realize that.
Until then, we must do our thing. We must go after. We must chase. We must educate not only ourselves, but by educating yourself, you
bottom top. You bottom up. Bottom up.
That's
bottom up. Grassroots movement for law enforcement is yes. Individual officers should go out. But when I watch a video like the guy yesterday who had trouble apprehending the suspect, I can't help but look at that and say, how dare a police department let him go to work with that skill set? You see what I'm saying? Like, I feel any person who has a good heart and who wants to help enforce the law and who wants to help uphold you know, the community standards that they've benefited from their whole life and make the world a safer place. Anybody who wants to give their life to law enforcement, I commend the profession. Now, like any profession, there are good cops and there are bad cops, which is a topic for a different day. Like jiu-jitsu instructors, there are good ones and there are terrible, right, sexual predators who teach jiu-jitsu. So it can go both ways. Even in law enforcement, anybody who honorably wants to commit to, you know, wearing the badge and going out there and enforcing the law so that people can live safer lives, I commend them and I say, man, they should be permitted to apply and then go to the academy and get hired. And then at that point, once they've given themselves to that cause, it is the department's responsibility to give them the tools to uphold that cause safely and send them home at the end of the day in every single way possible. Now, accidents happen and we lose some of the best, right? In these altercations, these shootings, and violence happens.
Yeah.
But by and large, a simple scuffle, an everyday routine scuffle with someone who doesn't want to go to jail cannot turn deadly for the officer. And the likelihood of that is greatly affected by the degree of training provided them. No. So I look at that situation and I feel bad. I don't feel like, what's wrong with you, officer? Go get the training. I feel like, wow, the department let this guy down.
Yes.
And it doesn't change the fact that the officers who are pursuing the training, our hats go off to you, and you are creating a bottom-up movement in law enforcement because the reports do speak for themselves. Yes. The evidence is undeniable.
Yes. And
with enough track record of jiu-jitsu trained officers doing what they do best, there's no doubt that the change that we know needs to happen and should happen will happen, but it's going to take some time.
I agree with you. It's going to take some time, but listen to this. It's already happening. You understand? Every day, more people are on the GST courses. More people come back to us, show a video of an incident. It's already happening. So don't think like this. If you are the officer or civilian or whoever you are right now, don't think like, oh, okay, in 10 years. No, think that it's happening right now.
Movement right now.
If you're training jiu-jitsu and you're a blue belt, you are becoming a black belt today. Yeah. It's not going to happen in 10 years. It's going to happen today when you wake up and you go to training in a day that you say, I'm just going to skip it today. You understand? So every single action is a stepping stone for this idea of a safer society, right? Because we have a beautiful society in America. It's unbelievable. Now, to make the people that enforce that safety safer, it could not be a better cause. It could not, you know what I'm saying? That's why we wake up every day.
That's why we do what we do. Now, two more things. One disclaimer and one invitation. The disclaimer is when we put videos out like this, of situations and officers, whether it pans out well for the officer or not, more concerningly to the general public when it doesn't pan out well, there's always this feeling of how dare you, Rener, put a video up of this. Not always. Some, very few actually. I'm talking like the minority, but I wanted to speak to them for a second. People who say, how dare you put a video out there of an officer this and that and whatever. And just understand this, like there's no one who's more team blue without actually being police officers than us, in the sense that we believe in the cause, we believe in the idea of law enforcement and what they're fighting for.
Yes.
And we believe that with better training, they'll become better officers. And we use these videos as anecdotes, because if we don't recognize the problem, we'll never pursue the solution, right? And people who have, we have a large social media reach, so to put these videos out, it's important to educate people about the seriousness of the problem, and that's why we do that. So,
and just like everything,
and just know that our intention is never to degrade the officer or make fun of anybody. It really is a matter of, hey, this is the problem. We can help. And more often than not, as you guys know, we invite the officers involved or the department heads of that department so that then the change can help the entire department, not just that officer, as was the case with this one, where we invited the head instructor for all of his department to come do GST so that this officer can get the training as well as his colleagues. So just want you guys to know that our intention is always to help law enforcement, and in doing so, help the community. Now, some of you guys are members of police departments that don't have this training, aren't pursuing this training, and are way too slow moving for you to see this as a realistic opportunity in the realistic future while you're still a law enforcement officer. Know this, our GST course is primarily designed for trainers, right? For the trainers of the departments. However, we have many times, I would say every course is about 10 to 20% of attendees who are not trainers in their departments. They're actually end users and actual just, street cops who are out there beating the pavement and doing their work, right? And we love when they attend because it goes to show us that they went out of their way to make it happen. And know that if you're one of those officers who is not being sponsored to participate, you're paying for it yourself, you're taking vacation time to go, we see you and we want to help you participate. And if money is the reason why you can't do it, and you're an individual officer who's trying to pursue and get the training that can help you, do your job, we want to help you make that happen. So if money's the issue, reach out, gst@gracieuniversity.com, email us, and we'll find a way to make it work financially for you. Money should not be the reason why you don't get the training that you need to save your life and to protect the public you interact with.
That's beautiful.
Cool.
That's beautiful, brother.
So there it is, you guys. Thank you for joining us for this Gracie debate on law enforcement. It was one too important to not talk about collectively. We can't wait to hear your thoughts on the same subjects. But the conclusion is clear. It's the department's responsibility, but in the meantime... Hold on.
Got it.
It's the department's responsibility 100% to provide this training. And they need to feel that.
Okay, I agree. And?
However, in the meantime, we not only commend, but we respect the fact that the officers who are pursuing the training are the ones responsible for essentially influencing their respective departments to make these necessary changes. And in that sense, it is their responsibility to go pursue the training. For those who have the means, the opportunity, and the desire, it is your responsibility. But I know that not everyone falls into that bucket. So the rest of you guys probably have to wait around until greater change is made. And, I just hope that the ramifications of that wait and that delay don't pan out negatively for you or the civilians that you interact with in the meantime. All right? Thank you guys. Thank you, law enforcement. Thank you, all of you, for what you do.
Yes.
We appreciate our relationships with you more than you know. And we can't wait to see you guys at the next GST course. Thank you.